Good afternoon, gamers, and welcome to what's sure to be a fun episode of Games with Dave. Today is actually only the second ever episode of Paint and Talk with Dave, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by my friend, author, game designer, and artist, Stan Brown. Today, I'm going to be painting this little Goblin King. I don't know how well you can see him. Actually, I'll switch screens up for a second here so that maybe folks can see him. And Stan is going to be drawing his interpretation of said mini.
I've got him too, but I don't do minis painting.
I don't do very well, so I'm curious to see how this is going to look. I'm going to pop that back up there. But yeah, folks, thanks for joining us. If you tune in and kick back, have some fun, and ask any questions that might pop into your mind. Welcome to the show, Stan. I've been looking forward to this since we chatted. I think it was back on the 3rd when we did our little test.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to be here. I didn't know I was only the second person in the Dab and Gab series.
Yeah, I haven't done many of them because usually I don't have time to print minis for myself because I've been so busy, which is a great problem to have.
Yeah.
But
a problem nonetheless.
Yeah, it's still, but I'm excited to paint this little guy and see how bad I can make him look because I have the artistic talent of, well, it's not that great. That's all we'll say.
But I mean, here's the thing I talk about on my, I do 2 live stream shows for those of you watching who don't know. The one that's up here that I'm shilling for mostly is 50 Years in the Dungeon, which is an interview show kind of similar to this in that I talk to people who've worked in the industry and do drawings while we talk. I draw a cartoon homage to classic pieces of game art. But the other one is a show called Random Encounters, where I'm using random encounter tables to generate a drawing prompt, a who and a what. I'll have and I have it encounter tables like the kind you'd get in your games.
Yep.
An encounter table of mostly D&D monsters and characters, and then another table of situations, like the kind you might yell out in an improv comedy situation. And I roll the dice and I draw whatever comes up.
That is a really cool
the
concept.
people in the live chat get to comment and make suggestions and all that too. But I make the point that this came out of a thing I did just for fun. Right? It was an activity I made up for myself, just kind of as an ideation and creative challenge, and kind of just a fun drawing game.
Yeah,
but I encourage everyone there to draw. Sure, I'm there and I'm a professional cartoonist, and what I draw is hopefully going to be pretty good to some extent. But the whole point of it is it's just a quick lark. I don't know what I'm going to draw, and it comes out how it comes out. Sometimes I come out with something that turns out to be pretty good, and sometimes it really is just a mess. Because I do them quickly and I don't worry about it, and it's fun. It's the fun of the creative process. And
well, this will be fun regardless. I just can't guarantee the quality of my work.
But that's the whole. The minute you start worrying about that, the minute it becomes difficult, or it's pressure to do these things, and you should be doing them. Doesn't matter how they turn out, right? It's fun.
It is fun. So you, as a game designer, you got your start with TSR, if I recall correctly.
No, well, no.
Oh, I botched it already.
My first on-staff designer job was TSR. My first professional work was with West End.
Oh, I have those opposed on the opposite end of each other on here. I thought it was West End after TSR.
Oh no. So in the mid '90s, TSR. So TSR had made a habit throughout the '90s of hiring people from other companies, like letting other companies teach them the basics, finding out who's good, and then hiring them, which is a terrific process. And they had gone through just about everyone at GDW, and West End had some super talented people, and Bill Slavacek had left West End and wound up going to TSR, and so could give him the skinny on who was good and what was going on, and so they started hiring folks away from West End in '94, and so I was one of those people. In fact, I think I was the last of those people that came over that way. But I had been at West End. I was not on staff as a game designer, though I was designing stuff freelance and had begun my work with them as an author and game designer. That light's not working out so good. But when they hired me, well, I'd been up for a couple of editorial positions, and I finished second in the running for them, and which, of course, was sad for me. But in the end, the people they picked were really good people, and I find it hard to argue with the decisions. But then they said to me, because of other things I've been doing, that they'd be happy to hire me as a graphic designer, and I could move over to being an editor and designer when the next time a position opened, which wasn't likely to be terribly fast, which is why they wanted to grab me while they could. So I was my actual title was assistant art director. But I got hired at TSR based on what my real background was, which was editing and design.
Now, how long from the time you got to TSR was it before Wizards of the Coast purchased?
Not long at
TSR?
all. I got to TSR in '95, and the sale was in the first half of '97.
Oh, wow. Now, how different of a creature was like WotC before Hasbro bought them? Or did Hasbro bought Wizards of the Coast, if I...
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so I got that part right at least.
You know what? WotC was on its way. So I was talking about this. I remember whether it was in a show or just kind of privately recently. Probably was for a show, because I otherwise wouldn't have phrased it quite the way I'm about to. Wizards was in a position at that point that it was they were doing well, right? Peter, when he formed the company, he sold stock. He treated it like a company from the beginning. He sold stock, and he had investors, and there was a board of directors. And a lot of them were, friends of his. And so he did this, of course, with the promise that if he was successful, they'd all make money, and Wizards was making a lot of money, but it was still in that early stage of business development where money that got made went back into the company, and some of the people who had invested with it were like, "Hey, you promised us we'd make money. Wizards is now making Magic and its own CSR, and you're all over the place. How about when are we going to see some money?" I don't know how loud those voices were, but they were there. And knowing Peter, I know that he worried about that, or he wanted to do the right thing and to make money for his friends. And there was a lot of money to be made. So Wizards was examining the possibility of going public at the same time that the Hasbro sale was Hasbro was coming around saying, "We'd like to buy you." So when we got there, Wizards was on a trajectory that either it was going to be sold or it was going to go public sometime in the relatively near future. So either one of those things are a big change in corporate culture. And so the people who'd been around Wizards when we got there, who'd been around there a long time, were already complaining that the company was changing. It's changing. Exactly how it changed was determined by the fact that they went with the sale rather than going public.
Interesting. Now, when you were at Wizards, how many? It looked like a very long list that I saw. Just do you know off the top of your head how many products?
Oh no, no.
A billion.
A lot of products. I mean, I have when I'm asked to put numbers, I generally say I've been part of over 200 game products.
Wow.
And that ranges from magazine articles to writing one adventure in a collection to writing the whole product to, and everywhere in between, and being the manager, being the creative director for projects. So there's a wide swath of how I might have been involved.
Gotcha.
But that number is up in the over 200 at this point. And a good lot of them were related to Wizards somehow.
Now, before I forget to touch on it, one of the projects that you've worked on recently was Damn It, Owen.
Yeah. Yes.
And was West End how the two of you met? Because I know he was with them as well.
No. Oh no. That is incorrect.
Different also. Timeline.
Owen was not at West End. Owen and I met.
I'm blowing everything here today. I'm sorry.
It's all right. That's all right. Gives us more to talk about, right? Owen and I met when I was at Wizards. Wizards started doing a thing called Game Design Camp. I think that was the name of it. But you could pay. Wizards at that point had a large arcade game center. It wasn't just regular arcade. They had the mech, the battle mech pods and other cool. Big things. And they had an area where they had Magic tournaments and had weekly D&D games run. And it was right near the university in Seattle, right near the University of Washington. And so they did this thing where if you paid a not insubstantial amount of money, you come in for a week, the people from the D&D team would come and teach classes about game design. And and the like. And I just want to look at this for a second. Okay. And Owen took part in game camp. And so what happened there was, for that week, we took turns coming in and teaching either a morning or an afternoon class, people from the design team. And Ed Stark and I teamed up for our two classes. So he had a class and I came and was kind of assisted him on that, and I had a class and he came and assisted me on that. But we basically called it the Ted and Stan show. And let's say Owen was in one of the classes. Each time we'd come in, we'd talk about a thing. We'd maybe give them homework. It's only a week long, so it wasn't really an assignment. But because most of the people only taught one class, because Ted and I were working together, I think we did give them something to think about, and we would talk about it in the next one. And Owen was he took advantage of the fact that he had this access to us. So we were treated super respectfully by everyone. In fact, a lot of people came in in awe of who was teaching their classes, and I think Owen no less than them. But I love when he tells a story. He had a book that his grandfather gave him that was put out during the Depression. A government published book called How to Get a Job. And it's just kind of good job hunting advice. But he went through it, and he followed some of that advice. And during the lunch break, there was a restaurant attached to the game center, and Ted and I purposely went and had lunch there. Some of the less socially comfortable people would take that lunch break as a chance to get away.
Yep.
Ted and I said, we'll go and sit there, and we'll grab a table, and if anyone wants to talk to us, that'll be great. And we sat down, and we were surrounded by people kind of staring at us, but they were all a little too, despite the fact that we just spent the morning talking to them, they were too nervous to come up and say hi. And Owen wasn't. And he came up and said, "I'm sorry, I know you may be trying to get away, but would it be okay if I sat down and had lunch with you?" And we said, "Absolutely, that's why we're here, sit down." And meanwhile, you see everyone else around the restaurant look at him like, "Oh my God, how did he do that?" And the answer is he asked.
Sometimes
anyway,
that's the trick.
That's how I got to know Owen. That's how I first got to know Owen. And he, among all the people there, is one of the few ones that followed all the suggestions we made, as well as the suggestions that were in his How to Get a Job book, which included following up. Right? You go home, you send a thank you note. You put the people who talked on your mailing list, and you send them a holiday card, or you send them just a little note saying, 6 months ago I was in your class, and I've been thinking about what you said. I just wanted to let you know that what an impact you made, just to keep yourself in mind. And the reason we suggest that is it works.
It does.
The way at that time, and less so, but still to this day, the way to get work is to when someone is looking, has a problem that needs to be filled, that you come to mind. It's going to be very rare that you make connections and get work straight away. What the making connections is about is getting yourself in so that they know who you are and have a positive feeling about you. And that when something you can do comes up, they think about you. And so Owen was he was doing article writing for Dragon Magazine, which is another thing we recommended at that time. And if there was still a Dragon Magazine, I would recommend it to this day. And so, Owen, he got a chance, and then position opened up in the department. And when he interviewed, people knew him already, and that's getting past one of the major obstacles is trying to get people to understand who you are and what you might be good at, what you might do. Anyway, that's how we met. And so then he came to work at Wizards, and we weren't especially close during those times. I knew him and we chatted and we were very friendly, but we didn't really run exactly in the same social circles. I remember when he left, I was one of the people that went over to his house for a last movie night. But then, he continued to do freelance stuff, and he continued to be a name that appeared in the industry. And I also wound up getting let go from Wizards, and there's a whole lot of years between, but I eventually wound up at a point where I was another friend and I opened a third-party PDF publishing concern called Super Genius Games, and we wanted to get people to write stuff for us. And I, of course, was taking advantage of my Rolodex of people I knew from having worked at Wizards, and I looked at Owen and everything he was doing, and I said, Owen would be great. So he did some work for us, and he did more work for us, and he did more work for us. And then we decided that, it would be cheaper and better for us if we just brought him on and he could just keep doing work for us, and we wouldn't have to worry about contracting him every time. And we'd know ahead of time. We could plan his schedule out so we'd know, here, you do this and you have this other opportunity, we can work around that. And that worked out pretty well until it didn't, through no fault of his, or only partially fault of mine. And that company disappeared. And then he started Rogue Genius Games because he'd continued to make a very big name for himself, doing great work.
He does do really great work.
And he invited me to be one of the founding members of Rogue Genius Games. So that's how we got to be where we're at today.
Nice. So
hey, Ed Stark.
Reviews. Let's see the progress on the mini. It's kind of hard to see because it's very dark. I painted the base
so that you're the main focus.
Sure. Well, I'll switch this off for 1 second and do this, and you can kind of see it. The green, everything's dark. I'm almost wishing I had primed it white so that it would stand out more. But I've got the base. I painted that gold, hoping it would add a little light to it. And then, and then Ed Stark says, "Hey guys, what's up, Ed? How are you?"
And that's Ed from the Stan and Ted show, or Ted and Stan show, depending on who.
Whoops, wrong
who
button.
Was saying it.
There we go.
Another fine game designer and writer and human being. Also, he's gotten into doing a lot of minis painting recently. You can find him on social media. He's been posting it, and in the same way you did at the start of this show, Dave, he always says, I'm not very good at this. And then, but you take a look at what he's doing, and he's getting pretty good at this.
That's awesome. I would like to get good at it, but I don't dedicate enough time to it. So it's definitely a fault of mine for not getting better at it. But one of these days, I'll have the time to set aside for it.
I tell you what, here's the thing: is a little by little you get there. You keep
Right.
You're right. If you may not have enough time to set aside to really devote to it, but that doesn't mean that you're not getting better as you practice bit by bit. Doing these kind of things, even if they're intermittent, that's that's the that's the key to any of this. Again, like I say with the drawings, people often tell me, "No, I'm no good, and I want to get better." I'm like, "Well, you're going to be." First of all, let's just accept you're going to be bad for a while, and it's going to be slow, and that's okay. Everyone goes through that, no matter who.
Yep.
You know, if you're looking at me or Chad Lockwood or anyone, everyone goes through that. And there is no way to get good without going through that. It's the advantage for people who like Todd or me. God, do I feel weird putting myself in the same bucket with Todd? Is that we went through that stage when we were in junior high school or high school, you know, and everything was uncomfortable. Right. And we got through that in a period of our lives that it didn't matter. And if you're in your adult phase, you too often look at it and say, well, it's not going anywhere, so I shouldn't bother. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly. You should absolutely
I would as well. Ed's asking for another close-up of the mini, so I'll switch here. He's getting there.
Yeah, and I'll hold up the completely unpainted one.
You know what I should paint is the throne, and then that will really bring out more of the color, because I'm going to go with like a light gray. Now, you also worked at Upper Deck.
I did, yes. After I got laid off by Wizards, I wound up starting another, or I guess this would be the first co-starting a PDF publishing concern called Game Mechanics, the Game Mechanics.
Yep.
And with J.D. Weicker and Rich Redmond and Mark Schmaltz, all people who had been laid off by Wizards. And we had some critical success, but not a lot of financial success. And eventually I just wound up in a point where I needed to take I needed to make some money. And I got a job at Upper Deck. And so in 2005, I moved down to San Diego and worked in-house at Upper Deck for about 2 years before they started having layoffs.
Jeez, but you made a card of one of my favorite characters that I actually saw. It was a sketch card of Moon Knight. I think it was you, because it had what looked like your signature on it.
Yeah. Oh, so when shortly before or in the last months that I was there, Upper Deck started doing art cards. Also, they started doing Marvel art cards. While I was there, I was on the game team.
Yep.
Upper Deck Entertainment is what this section was called. And one of the main games they had was a TCG called Versus System. And they had two flavors of Versus System. One was for Marvel and one was for DC. And so they had contacts with both companies, and they parlayed that contact with Marvel into an art card series that they started doing, and that was when sketch cards were becoming huge. Like if you wanted to have a successful art card product, it had to include randomly inserted sketch cards. And so they did one, and it did great. And then they just decided, okay, we want to do a much bigger version, which means we need lots of sketch cards. And I got, as I was getting, or after I got laid off, the art director involved reached out to me and said, "You want to do some sketch cards? They don't pay much, but here I'll give you a deck of them." Or gave me like 100 cards. Said, "Do as many as you want." And
wow.
I was doing a couple of things at that point with the I think my handle on one or two of the proto social medias of the time was Doodle Stan, and so I just did very quick sketchy sketch cards. Also, they weren't paying a lot, and I just wanted to do a lot of them. So some of the collectors really complained because you could get a sketch card that was done by a big name artist who took their time on it, or you could get one from me who no one knew who I was, and it was a doodle, but it was intentionally a doodle. So yeah, somewhere I've still got a folder. I got a series of JPEGs of all the ones that I drew. I took pictures of them for my records.
Yeah, I love that Moon Knight sketch card. And then I realized you had done it. I love your sketch cards.
Oh, so. Thank you. All right. That looks pretty good.
Pretty good. That looks great. Yeah, that looks fantastic.
Let's jump that up and start doing some inks on this.
And you didn't add the supports, which I'm going to admit publicly that I forgot to take out of his mouth.
When you look at it, I didn't notice until I started looking at the sketch. It's not just the mouth. Look around the helmet.
Oh yeah, I even missed those on mine. There's going to be hair.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at a photo you can't see right now. But yeah, there's little supports in the helmet.
I've got a couple there too. Dang it. Oh well. We're still having fun, even with the little hairs on there.
That's what it's all about. And this guy looks like he's got some stray hairs. Was I saying to you that you should just tell people that it's his nose hairs? He just didn't.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I've got to watch more of 50 Years in the Dungeon. I started watching some after we started talking back the beginning of the month and planned on this. But you do a fantastic job.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a show. I mean, I guess I'm to promote it, since this is a promotional opportunity. I started it as a way to celebrate the 50th anniversary of D&D last year. Like, the idea came to me in early January of 2024, when I realized there's a lot of people talking about this as the 50th anniversary year, and I was looking at it and saying, well, someone should do a show like where they talk to the people who worked on it. And I was also at the time trying to come up with ways to get myself back in the public eye a little. Although, as we were talking about before, I've written and worked on a bunch of products. For the most part, they're old news, right? They're collectors know about them, or new people coming in looking around. But I wasn't showing up in new gamers. I was the answer to a trivia question. There used to be this guy who's called himself Stan with an exclamation point. What's up with that? And a lot of that was because I had made the move out of doing design mostly to doing management. I was a producer and a creative director, and uh, now I really wanted to start getting back into. Well, I was doing cartooning more and more, and that's what I wanted to do. But that really relies on you having an audience. You got to somehow get an audience. And I used to have an audience. People used to know who I used to be somebody. Um, so I was looking for different things I could do to do that. And I was looking at video, and I realized that this show would be great, and I could work drawing into it too. And although I may not have name recognition out in the broader audience like I used to, a lot of people who work in the industry still know me and have good opinion of me. I hope. So I was
don't see
able
how
to.
they couldn't. So
Well, I try to make it hard to not like me. So and I had phone numbers. One of the things that happened at Upper Deck, we were working. Someone proposed a new project, and that we do like web fiction. We do fiction to go along with it. And I'm sitting in this meeting, and about 5 or 6 people, and they're talking about it. They say we should get someone with a name people recognize to help promote it, or to write the fiction, because that'll give it some gravitas. And we've got the budget to do it, and Upper Deck did that all the time. They could afford to go and hire people rather than scrounge around and try and build up from nothing.
yeah.
And so someone said, yeah, we should get someone like Jeff Grubb. And I said, oh, Jeff does that kind of stuff all the time. All you have to do is ask him. They said, well, can we ask him? And I said, just a minute. And I pulled out my phone because I knew that he had been let go from his job recently. He was between gigs and looking for freelance, because Jeff and I live about a quarter of a mile and a half from each other right now, and we work together at Wizards, and we game together in the same game group. So I just called him up right there in front of everyone, and they were like, "What?" And so in the meeting, all of a sudden, I got Jeff on the phone, and they said, Mr. Grubb, we were thinking we might want to do this and want to know if you were interested. And he said, well, it all depends on the details. Why don't you guys talk about it and have Stan give me a call back? Which, of course, increased my my status within the Upper Deck crowd. They're like, how did you do that? Well, I know Jeff. That's how I did it.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
So for 50 years in the dungeon, the same kind of thing, that there was a lot of people I could reach out to and say, hey, I'm doing this thing. You want to participate? And again, because I have been lucky or manipulative enough to make sure that people like me, people mostly have said yes.
So we got a question.
Oh,
Stan, got any insight as to why RPG novels dried up? Was it just low sales?
No, it was not. It was not just low sales. I think that so I don't have the sales numbers, and I was the book department was a different department than the game department, though we worked very closely together. So I don't have absolute firm info on this. But I was, of course, in the same building and went to meetings with people like that. And I know that sales were not what they had been, but I don't believe they dried up, to use that term. They just were not what they had been. And in the early aughts, I feel like I'm talking about my great grandfather's age, but in the early 2000s, there was a shift in media going on. What turned out into what we've seen today with magazines and newspapers disappearing and all that. But books were still doing pretty well. But it was in order to do what Wizards was doing and what TSR had been doing, which is publishing 3 to 5 to sometimes 6 books a month, you needed a staff. You needed a significant book department to do that. And Wizards was, I see this a lot, and I also was having another conversation along these lines recently. There's you get a thing that happens in business when business people who come just from the or mainly from the MBA and running a company side of view look at the money that a company is spending and start having conversations about the right kind of money and spending money to maximize return. And the fact of the matter is that those books were never going to, the Wizards in particular wound up with several people in the C-suite who looked at the return on investment that you get from Magic and from a TCG and measured the viability of the other departments against that. And they wanted every department to give returns in the same ratio that Magic did. And the fact of the matter is that different businesses, different business models have different reasonable expectations, and it is unreasonable to expect books, novels, or RPGs, or magazines, another department that got shuffled out, to return money in that ratio. And decisions started getting made at Wizards, in my opinion. So this is my opinion based on what I saw. I don't have the numbers to back this up, and I'm sure there are people who were there who would disagree with me. But my opinion is that the upper management, the people that were making these decisions at that level, just started looking at these different sectors and measuring them only by their ability to return that kind of profit, or if not only, really mostly by that. And if they couldn't, then that was a bad business. Wizards didn't want to be in that business. Wizards wanted to be in the kind of business that returns money at that big scale. And so they started doing things like shipping out the magazines department, and that's what turned into Paizo Publishing. People who had been the Wizards magazine department got funding, or some of them had funding because of the money they made in the buyout, and started a company with the express purpose to license the products they had been making in-house. So last week it was a Wizards product. Next week it was a Paizo product, but it was the same people doing it, and so they were able to leap in right away and do such a good job of it. That's why the magazines of that era were just as good, if not better, because they got released from some of the constraints that Wizards was putting on them. And they were now their own company trying to maximize their own potential. So the book department lasted longer than that, but eventually my take on it, because I was gone by the time this happened. The book department long outlasted my stay at Wizards. But eventually, from what I was seeing from the outside and what little I know specifically from friends who were there at the time, the book department fell into the same category. It's just it required a whole department and not just editors and designers and layout people, but salespeople and marketing. It required all these details and money that Wizards said, well, we don't want to do that anymore. It's never going to make the kind of money we want it to make. So let's not do it at all. And so I don't believe that the sales for the books ever got that terrible. I don't think it ever was allowed to stick around. I think that to drop that low. Let's say I'm pretty sure that it was no longer at its peak, but it was still a lot of sales, and it was still a driving force in the sci-fi and fantasy fiction genre writ large. So, yeah. So my long way of answering that question is that I don't think it shriveled up. I think that it had some challenges, but it was still a thriving entity that on its own probably was doing better than most genre publishers at that time, but it wasn't doing good enough for Wizards.
Interesting. That's too bad. I mean, from a corporate standpoint, I guess, yeah, it makes sense because for them it has to be about the shareholders, but it's still too bad.
Well, it does. Yes, the thing is that a good company, in my you get a game designer's idea of what a good company is, so take that for what it's worth. A good company should pay attention to serving not just how much money does everything make. There are follow-on values, and one of the values of having that book department is it drove awareness and fandom of the other things they did sell. And if you get rid of the book department, you can't just replace it. You can't just buy that kind of connection. You can't buy that kind of promotion. You can't buy the fact that anyone who goes into the bookstore sees Forgotten Realms taking up 4 shelves of stuff every month with new books coming out every month.
Right.
You just lose that. You just lose it if you get rid of those things. And it's easy to look at the spreadsheet at the end of the month and say, well, look, we saved this much money. But what almost never happens is that when future sales slough off or attention sloughs off, that no one recognizes that or no one in that department in the C-suite recognizes that the reason is that you stopped doing this thing which was only a little profitable.
But it was a huge catalyst for things.
Yeah. When I again at Upper Deck, one of the last things I was involved with there was supposed to, and they're not the only place that I've seen this happen. It was supposed to be a set of projects that took advantage of that they could be profitable, but they would be considered marketing. So instead of being a product that didn't make enough money, it was a marketing expense that actually earned money. It was a net positive marketing expense.
Gotcha.
which really is the way big companies should. Uh, uh, Maybe not all of them, but many of them could or should think about producing games. Right? If they've got other things that are producing the kind of money they want, then the games are a way to do marketing that actually earns money. But as the other thing that's happened at every company I've ever seen that attempted to do this is someone liked it, it looked good on paper, someone higher up didn't get it, and eventually just ran the numbers and thought of it and treated it like a product, because it still is a product.
Right.
And then they would say, well, your product isn't making enough money, and try to argue that it's not a product, fails, and the whole effort gets canned. So yes, I was in working on some of that at Upper Deck. In fact, one of the reasons that I got laid off was that they decided they weren't going to be doing those things, and therefore, well, don't need that many people. The other thing that mistake, and I don't consider this a mistake at all, but the one of the mistakes that what got me laid off at Upper Deck was that um, I had been, and I still was, the in charge of the team that did text generation, writing for either flavor text or art orders for the cards or marketing text, and the website, which had daily updates. And I was in charge of that team. But for this new project, I didn't give that up, but I took less of a daily hand in it. It became very clear to anyone that was watching that my department was kind of running on its own. And so they began to look at me and say, well, what do we need him for? He's set up a department that runs on its own. And
I
so
would say that's pretty
I was
great
just
to be
kind of,
able to do that, if
yeah. Well, I mean, so anyone that understands what's going on understands that while I was not doing anything, like each day to day thing was happening, I had my eye on 3 months down the road, and I was still involved in talking to everyone and clearing the path ahead of them so it would happen, so things would work out. And so what happens when you get rid of the person in that position is that everything goes great for 3 months. And then you hit a spot where no one has been doing that work for 3 months, and everything grinds down, and suddenly you've got a big mess.
Oh, man. Yeah, that sounds like it would create a mess for sure.
And in fact, that happened to them. But by the time that happens, you are 3 months or longer out of the building, and there's no um, there's no connection. No connection is made between letting you go and this problem that happens 3 to 5 months later.
At least in their eyes.
Right, right. No, the people that made the decision to let you go do not see the connection when the time comes to figure out what went wrong. But like I say, I don't hold a particular grudge about that. I have seen this happen not just to me in other companies and other situations, and it's part of the game, part of the business game.
Here, I'll show the mini. I switched to a lighter, like goblin green. Here, let me
Yeah.
switch for his skin tone. It's hard
There
to
you
see.
go. Looking good. Looking good.
So another thing that we talked kind of at great length about when we got together back the beginning of the month was baseball.
Yes.
It seems that we are both big baseball fanatics. I actually had my Red Sox hat on earlier, but it was making it so you couldn't really it shadowed my face too much, so I decided to take it off. And yeah, you grew up a Mets fan
And I still am.
and still are. Um
You're a
and
Red Sox fan, and when we brought that up before, I apologized to you for 1986.
Well, it
But
wasn't your
yep,
fault, and we've even forgiven Bill Buckner for it, even though it really wasn't his fault in hindsight. That was not his fault. I mean, the ball hit the bag and bounced, and
yeah, you know what? That's baseball, right? These things
yeah.
happen.
And I won't lie, in 2004, I cried like a baby when they finally won the World Series. Um, that was that was such a great moment to get to see. And if I stop and really think about it, I can even still get emotional about it today because of the impact. Growing up, baseball was such a huge part of my life and in yours as well, that, yeah, I get emotional when my boys win.
It's a great game. It's America's pastime.
How are the Mets doing this year? I know the Red Sox are only 2.5 out of first.
The Mets were tied for the best record in baseball 10 days ago, and now
Wow.
are just doing well. They had a little mini losing streak, but they're doing surprisingly well. Actually, I was not expecting this year to start this like this. We'll see what happens in the summer, which has been their bane for the last few years.
The Red Sox as well. They are well known for their midsummer slumps. So, and then it's like August, they decide to shake off the rust a little bit,
Yeah,
late August, early September, and be like, "Oh, we're still contenders here. We can make a push for this." Oh, I painted over his eyes. Darn it! That's not what I wanted to do. Maybe it'll help them not look like white blobs. Take care, my friend. RPG Overviews has to leave. He says he's
no,
got a video to make. Thanks for the chat. Thanks for joining us.
thank you for joining us, and thanks for the good question.
And Ed had to leave as well. He said he had to
Yep,
jump back on
I
the
missed his goodbye. Bye, Ted.
road. Yeah, this green is working much better than the dark green I had initially chosen.
Hey, I have an advantage artistically working digitally in that when I that kind of color issue happens, and it happens a lot. It's super easy for me to just click a few buttons and test out, find the right color, and suddenly everything's right.
Yeah, I used this, what was called hardened brown on the treasure chest, and it does not even look like I painted it. It's that dark. And I'm like, perhaps I should have grabbed a different brown. So when, like, I'm assuming that you've been doodling, drawing, painting since you were a kid.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
when was that moment that you're like, this is what I want to do?
Well, it's a series of moments because I certainly there was a point where I could have decided to do this, and I pointedly decided not to because I enjoyed it so much. So I didn't. I said out loud, I don't know this. I want to just keep this fun. I don't want to do this for work. And that's a decision that you make in your 20s when you're an idiot. Um, so I when I graduated university, um, I was kicking around doing crappy jobs like you do, and my dad was not particularly pleased with that decision. I was a good student. I was a good student. Did very well in school, and then kind of got out and just was doing crappy jobs and wasn't looking at either doing grad school or applying for a full time job or going and getting my teaching credentials or anything. I was just kind of mucking around. And he and I was trying to. I was doing a lot of drawing, and that was the point when independent comics were having their 80s heyday, and I was in my head dreaming about doing that, but I wasn't really working toward it actively enough for it to happen. um but he knew that I loved cartooning, and I knew that I loved comics. I loved Marvel comics. I was a big Marvel comics collector slash fan. And one of the people that he worked with was neighbors with a guy named Stan Goldberg, who you probably haven't heard of, but he was a big um, artist and inker for Marvel in the early 60s when they were still doing stuff that wasn't superhero stuff necessarily.
Yep.
He did a lot of work on a character called Millie the Model, um, who was very, very popular. I guess they would have called it girls comic at the time.
Yep.
And he went on to, at that point in the 80s, he had been working for Archie Comics for a very, very long time. And a lot of the comics, the Archie comics from the 80s would have been done by him. In fact, he was doing the daily Archie newspaper strip, and he was doing Archie stories for the comics and all kinds of stuff. And so the guy my father worked with said, I got this neighbor Stan, and he has nothing to do with me being Stan, but interesting name situation. They had this neighbor Stan who works in cartooning, and he always helpful to anyone to ask. I could see if he'd be willing to talk to your son, and so he did. And Stan Goldberg said, absolutely, I'd be happy. He can bring his portfolio around. I'd be happy to talk to him, tell him what I think, give him some straight up advice. And so I did. I went and visited Stan Goldberg in his home. He had a nice little rumpus room of an office down in the basement. Wood paneling, 1970s wood paneling, all the good stuff. They had leather-bound volumes of Millie the Model. He said because she paid for this house, so he figured that they needed to treat her right. And he looked at my stuff and had very nice things to say about it.
That's awesome.
And he had suggested, I had at the time done a comic strip for my university newspaper. I was no longer with, the funny thing is I didn't do it while I was going there. But after so I guess got to explain this part of the story too. I went to school. I grew up in the New York metro area. I went to school at State University of New York at Binghamton, which is upstate or mid-state New York. And I stayed in Binghamton after graduating. That's where I was doing my crappy jobs. And the school newspaper, which I had not worked on when I was there, their comics had gotten so bad and it pissed me off so much because I'd still pick the newspaper up because it was free at every pizza place in Binghamton.
Yep.
I'd pick it up, and I was so mad. I said, "Oh, they need a good, strip." So I pitched it, and they said, "Yeah, just deliver it to us on whatever the days were, and we'll put you in." And so no one at the paper knew me. I'd contacted them by phone and mail, and I would just drop the comics off uh, after I finished work. I'd go and I'd slide it under the door at the um, newspaper, and it'd get published. So no one there knew who I was. I was just a an alumnus who was doing these comics that were uh, very popular. They wound up to be pretty popular, and in fact, got picked up. There was there was a publication that picked up the best stuff from college newspapers across the country and published them as a poster. It was just that got sent around to the colleges, and usually they got hung in like the dorm laundry room or somewhere, the places where people gathered. It was just kind of an article from Penn State and an article from UCLA and a photo essay from University of Michigan, and they picked up my comic one time, and I got covered as one of the best things that month in college newspaper.
That is so cool.
It didn't
you
come
so
with
many
any
great stories.
I
love
yeah,
it.
I mean, it was on a poster that no one really paid attention to, and it wasn't big news, but it was a pretty big. I looked at it as the kind of semi big deal that it was. Right, I got picked up best in the country, one of the best things in the country. They have the entire country worth of newspaper of college newspaper comics to pick from for one that they will print on that month's issue, and they chose mine. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that is really cool.
So Stan Goldberg, in looking over my stuff, I had a lot of comic book style page to page stuff, which is what I wanted to do. If that's what I love doing. But there was no market for that in my style. And my style, not that different from what my style is now. Very cartoony, pretty goofy. And I was drawing like Marvel characters in this style, or superhero characters in this style. And Stan looked at it and he said, "Well, I don't know about this. It's been a long time since I did anything for Marvel. I don't know what they're doing that might work about that. I think that your newspaper strip stuff is just great." You know what? I'm not sure he said great, but he did say that's where it's at. That's what you've got that I look at. And that was the years when Kathy, the comic strip Kathy,
Yep,
was just getting started, and it was a super big deal. It was kind of revolutionary in its time, even though it really was as as it turns out it was 10 years later, but it was different, and it was a comic featuring the kind of character that hadn't been featured before. But he looked at it and he said, "I think that you could do a Kathy, but for young folks your age, right? For the college age crowd, because that's what my stories were. They were the comic strip was about students.
yeah.
It was called Making the Grades, and it was a comic about college students, not surprisingly. And he said, I'd be totally willing to work with you to develop a pitch and for a daily syndicated strip and to show it to my editor and to kind of help you through this, get your foot in the door and get it seen by the people who should see it.
Wow.
And that's when I said just what I said earlier. I thought about it and decided, I just want this to stay fun. I don't want to make that. I don't love doing comic strips. Like, I love doing comic book style stuff, but I don't love doing comic strips, and I don't really think I want to do that. It's like, oh, I understand. It's a tough thing. You shouldn't do it if you don't want to, but got to tell you, if you do, I think you got a good start there. You got a good style, and I think that you could be successful at it, and I'd be willing to give you a hand. And I said very politely, thank you. I really appreciate that. Right now, I don't think I'm going to go down that route, but thank you.
That is very cool.
So basically, that's like the golden ticket. Like, any cartoonist who's hearing me say that, any cartoonist of my age, and probably even younger people, we now live in an era where newspaper strips are not what you're looking for, but I think everyone recognizes, holy cats, that's a kind of offer that almost never comes around. And I just turned my nose up at it. So maybe a bad call there. And I never would have been doing game design then, so my entire career would have been different.
See, we probably never would have met had you been a strip artist and like comic writer versus a game designer. So
yeah,
I think you made the right choice.
It worked out in the end.
What color do I want to go with here?
Shaking up the paint.
Yep. Yeah, I got a little on my microphone. It's funny. So now it's got a little touch of paint to it. And I tried to rub it off and it went in the little holes on the microphone. And I'm like, oops.
Now everything sounds orange.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I have a tendency to let one story run into another story, And I just realized part of this, going back to an hour ago, you had asked about Owen because you wanted to ask about
yes, damn it,
Owen cartoons.
I have got to get that book because I was unable to back it. Is it able to?
Yes.
Am I still able to purchase one?
I believe it's still available. Rogue Genius Games has it on their drive-through. If you go to their drive-through site, you should be able to find Damn It, Owen. So what this is a collection of cartoons that I've done over the years. When Owen posts tons of stuff, and a lot of it's funny, and a lot of it's weird, and a lot of it I find very kind of inspirational. It just an idea pops into my head. Oh, that should totally be a cartoon. And so the Damn It, Owen cartoons are ideas that were so good that I just had to draw them. Like, I'd get up in the morning, I'd see something Owen posted, and I was like, damn it, Owen. and so for my warm-up drawing for the day, it would be something based on a post or something Owen had said. And at the bottom of most of them, I would sign it, and it would say, damn it, Owen. So Owen, for those of you who don't know, was diagnosed with cancer a couple of years ago and been going through treatment. And of course, that comes with a whole lot of medical debt. And
yeah,
I knew that I'd been doing a bunch of these Damn It Owen drawings over the years, and we'd always thought, some days this might make a good a good book, which in fact is what the cartoon on the cover.
Here, let me.
I don't know if we want to pop over to just. Right, so let's see if I can get this here. Yeah, so these are little drawings of Owen.
I've got work to do. Get out of here.
Actually, you know what? Go back to the my drawing image. Here's what I can do. Pop out of this gallery. And is this where it is? Yes. Here we go. This is the cartoon for the cover.
That is too funny because they're all his hashtags
buzzing around me. Yeah. And so the Damn It Owen drawings are things like this. Right? He wrote up a creature called a Goodruff, which was a kind of a centaur bear-ish thing.
Oh goodness. It's a picnic.
That I don't remember what he wrote about it that made me go for the picnic basket angle, but something he said inspired that. And you can see down in the corner. I guess you can't. It's hidden under the. There we go. Down in the corner.
Okay.
I put Damn It Owen. And so we've got lots of them. Like here we go. Here's a character he described who was a cowardly hunter style, kind of like a the Spider-Man villain Kraven.
Yeah, it's like cowardly Kraven almost.
Well, like Kraven is a pun for Kraven is someone who's cowardly, which I think must have been his inspiration, but I don't know because it was his idea. But I wound up drawing it, and so this book is filled with. Let's say we go back here, and there are lots of them.
Wow.
These are almost all Damn It Owen drawings. And when he was a co-host on the Green Ronin's live stream show, Thursdayage, I would watch it, and he also would just kind of throw out ideas, and I would draw those too. And quickly, like while the show was still on, he'd say something in the first 5 minutes. I'd draw it and send it to them so they could show it on screen before the show was over.
I love it.
Like this was definitely one stampede.
Now I've got to ask, seeing this, what is your favorite kind of pie?
What's my favorite kind of pie?
Yeah.
Oh, my favorite kind of pie is key lime.
I can honestly say I've never tried key lime pie. I have always been a chocolate pie.
I do like a chocolate pie. I like, what, a chocolate. So there's a chocolate cream cheese pie.
Ooh.
Like a cheesecake, but it's really a cheesecake. But one of the restaurants used to serve it and call it a pie. I really like that. That's good.
Yeah, that sounds delicious. Because I love cheesecake too. And
yeah, my mom made a killer cheesecake.
My mom was always good for cookies. She could make the softest chocolate chip cookies you would ever eat. And
nice. So we put together that book as and did it as a Kickstarter with a good portion of the funding. In fact, the majority of the funding going to help pay Owen's medical bills, and a not insignificant amount of it going to me as the person that did all the drawings.
That's great, though, and I'm glad is he technically in remission? Or?
He is. Yes. No. He is cancer-free. He's been declared cancer-free.
I know I saw the picture of him ringing the bell with the gauntlet, which was fabulous. I've got to get him back on and do a paint and talk. I sent him some minis a little while ago and some tank pieces. And in there, I had a
Are you the one
Starfinder
that sent him
goblin.
those skeleton things that he couldn't figure out who sent him?
Nope, I don't think that was me. Skeleton things. No, that was not me. I sent him some tank parts and then a good sized Starfinder goblin. It's about the same size as the one we're drawing and painting.
Mm.
That I was saying to him I thought would be fun for us to get back on air and paint the goblin together.
I think I would love to see you guys do that.
You're both master storytellers. I've got to say, I could sit and listen to both of you tell stories all day.
I think that's one of the reasons we like each other so much.
I'm kind of stuck with my mini. I don't know where to go next. I did not grab all the colors I had intended to. I had intended to grab a speed paint of a bone color for the teeth in that cup. But I'm going to have to make do with what I did.
You do what you got.
Yep. I spilled a bunch of tan paint into the palette, fortunately. So I think that's what we'll do the gobbo's teeth in, is a light tan.
So one of the things that has not come up in this conversation yet, that comes up in a lot of my conversations, and I don't know if it's just because I've talked about it a lot, or if it's because you don't know, and that's it. Before I got into gaming professionally, in fact, what I was doing when I got hired by West End, I was teaching English in Japan.
Oh, wow. That must have been fun.
All right. It was. And one of the things I did there, and again, this was one of the things that appealed to West End, was I was a co-founder of a English language gaming network. Basically, I wanted people to game with, and I couldn't find any, so I created an organization. At the same time, another guy was creating a similar organization, so we joined up. And the main purpose was to get me people that I could game with. so I wanted it to so I kept the roll, I kept the log, the phone list for, if you want a game in English, here's a bunch of people who might be interested. This of course was pre email. I mean, some people had email, but not everyone had email. So
yep,
phone lists were how it went.
Yeah, I missed that in my research. So
I was running the organization, and I made a newsletter. I was the main writer, editor, graphic designer, layout person. I did there. It was a zine before we started using the word zine. So the fact that I did this layout was what got me the job at Upper Deck, because
nice.
Ed Stark was who was in the chat earlier, was working at Upper Deck, and I sent him stuff from Japan all the time, and I would send him copies of each month's magazine. And so
yep,
he would bring it in and say, "Hey, this is what Stan's doing. He's making this magazine, laying it out." And they said, "He could do stuff for us. Get him over here."
Now, how long were you in Japan?
About 5 years.
Nice. Now, do you speak fluent Japanese? Or...
I do not. You know what? One of the things that you worry about when you're going over there, but it's very easy to get by in English in Japan. Particularly, I mean, I had a company that I worked for, and I was working as an English teacher. So everyone wanted to speak English with me.
Ah, okay, that makes sense.
And there are a significant number of people whose English skills are not super, but everyone who gets through high school has 5 years of English. That's a requirement. And
Wow.
anyone that goes to college has another 4 years of English on top of that. So by and large, people have a very good grounding in English, even if they're not comfortable with it, even if they've forgotten a lot of it. That American movies, American TV, there's English all over the place. And if you are the kind of traveler who, or the kind of person who can know not to assume that people will understand what you're saying, but make a stab at some of the Japanese. A lot of people speak English, and there's most places you wind up going, there's someone who wants to try out their English on you. And all of one things people don't know, all of the train stops, there's English on the signs as well as Japanese. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. Every stop you go to has the name in Japanese, but underneath it, it's written in what we call Romaji, in Roman letters. So it's basically English of the name of the station and what the next station is and what the next station on either side is. If you just kind of relax and are observant, there's a whole lot of English to be had and a whole lot of clues that make it very easy. And the more comfortable you get there, the easier it is. So I took advantage of that rather than forcing myself to study hard. So my Japanese is fairly weak. For someone who's lived there 5 years, it's weak. But my understanding of the language and my understanding of the culture is pretty strong. Which is one reason why one of the things I've done a lot of in the last 20 years is I'm a freelancer for Viz Media, the publishers of, they publish manga in English.
Okay.
They do Legend of Zelda. They do Dragon Ball. I mean, they're one of the big, if not the biggest, publisher of Japanese comics in English. And so I work as a freelancer for them doing English rewriting, which is that I work with material that's gone through a translator that's not ready to be published. So it's right. It's technically right, but it's not entertaining enough. It's not. It's a little stilted. It's not what a company wants to be their output for the world.
Right.
And
just
so
needs a little more polishing type thing.
And like often things like idioms come through, and it's like, well, that's not. No one will understand what that means. Or jokes that come through that no one will understand what that means. Cultural references, and so I get the literal translation and I rewrite it into the finished script that's used to make the comic.
Well, I better not tell my 14-year-old daughter that, because she'll be like, "Let's call Stan. Let's call Stan." The manga collection that she has is insane.
Well, if she has a bunch of stuff from Viz, there's a good chance my name will be in some of it.
Oh boy, I'll have to tell her. I'll have to look and see what she's got. She's big into like let me see. Demon Slayer,
I
My
was going to
Hero
say, so the
Academia.
first 17 issues of for 17 volumes of Demon Slayer, I did.
Nice. I'm gonna have to torment her tonight when I talk to her and be like, so I spent the afternoon talking to the guy that did the first 17 issues of Demon Slayer. She's gonna be like, what?
I just finished. Hold up, I just did the rewrite for volume 25 of Gundam Thunderbolt.
Nice. Yeah, it's funny. My stepdad used to give her a really hard time for listening. Wow, look at that. That is amazing. My stepdad used to give her a really hard time about reading manga. And like, because she was never really, at the time, she wasn't really into reading like novels, novellas, stuff like that.
Right.
And he would give her such a hard time until she really got into reading books. And because of spending so much time reading manga, she just tears through books now. And
Right.
he's like, and I'm like, see, it all paid off. And I think it
Right.
used to confuse him how things kind of went from back to front in some of the manga. And he'd be like, this just doesn't make sense to me. And I'm like, well, she loves it though. Yeah, what else? There's a new one that she just got into that I can't remember the name of, but her room, she just has shelves of manga. Look at that. Wow.
Yeah, I'm not the best, but I'm pretty quick.
I wish I had some of her artwork that I could pull right up to show you. I just lost the name of the character. Toga from My Hero Academia.
Mm.
She loves to draw her. And you would think that at like 10 and 11, when she was starting to draw these, that she had traced them. But she has this uncanny ability to look at a character for like 5 minutes and then turn around and almost perfectly replicate what she just looked at. And you know, she's a lot like you. She's like, I just like to do it. I don't want to do it like professionally.
Yeah.
Because she's
Well,
had people mention
tell you
that
what,
to
I
her.
encourage her to keep that feeling, and if eventually she does, so much the better. But in just having the fun of it is great.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I will show you my goblin. He's taking shape. Let me see here. What button? I want to click this one. He's slowly taking shape.
He's looking good.
Yeah. I'll switch back here because I am thoroughly enjoying watching you draw this.
Well, that's why I do the Thursday night show. In fact, that's why I do 50 Years in the Dungeon the way I do. It's the magic trick that makes an interview show into something a little more unique.
Yeah. Yeah, you're up around 100 and some odd episodes with Random Encounters. You've been
Random
doing that for...
Encounters, yeah, they just passed. We just passed a 2-year mark, and without missing a week. So I just did episode 105 this week.
Wow, that's crazy. I'm more. It's like, how do you go without missing a week? I was supposed to have had an interview earlier this week that I unfortunately had to cancel because of monsoon season blowing through Maine, and we lost internet for the evening. And I was just like, well, there goes that one. And
yeah, well, I mean, it's a combination of good luck and a couple of times I've pre-recorded when I knew I couldn't be around.
That's actually a pretty good idea. I just don't like editing, so I like to do everything
Well,
live.
I just treated it like a live, like I pre-recorded it. I do it like on a Saturday afternoon. In
Yep.
fact, I would stream it. I just sent a note out to the subscribers, say, "Hey, I'm going to stream on Saturday, and it's going to be Thursday show. Show up if you want."
Yeah. Interesting. Sorry.
All right.
That looks fantastic, my friend.
Thank you. I'm trying to decide what I
Wow.
want to do color. Now I'm in a phase similar to you, what you're doing. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do color-wise. So I'm going to put it down for a second and stretch.
Yeah, that's what I have to do is just set him aside for a minute. And I've got so much tan on him already. I don't want to do the treasure chest tan, but at least until I get the lights up, this treasure chest looks like it's black still because I used a hardened brown on it.
Yeah.
But now I got to figure out his boot color. I've got purple on his shirt, or like his furs on the front. But
I think I'm going to have him bare chested.
Yeah, that works too.
I mean, I've got the advantage of, I drew it the way I want it to be. I don't have to work with the real thing.
Right.
Like I see, I'm looking here on his belt. He definitely has fur coming over the top of the belt, and I didn't put that in there at all. But no one can tell me I'm wrong.
Nope. That is true.
Looking at it, I'm kind of want to put it in there now. Oh, well.
He looks like he looks far more sinister the way I did. I did his eyes red just because of Pathfinder goblins.
Right.
And he looks far more sinister. Yours still looks like he'd eat you, but he doesn't look like horribly mean. Mine looks like he's kind of possessed.
Well, I mean, I looked at that. I'm looking at the. I don't know whether I said this before or on the air. Just because of how tough it is for me to hold this and look at it, I've taken a photo, and I've got the photo. I've got the thing next to me and a photo up on my screen. And when I look at it, that mouth, he looks like he's laughing.
Yeah. Like, thanks for coming to get eaten or something along those lines.
Right. For those who are about to get eaten, we salute you.
Yes. I gotta get all this fur too.
All right.
Let's put now I see where I was mistaking. Yeah, it's funny because initially I started this whole podcast as a way to force me out of my comfort zone. Because I normally don't just talk to people I don't know. I would have been much like most of the students you had in the design school, that I would have been one of the shy ones, despite how it may seem nowadays. And I just didn't want to be like that anymore.
Well, you picked a great way to do it.
Yep, and I just randomly started messaging people I didn't really know, and some I knew, and I was like, hey, what would you think of coming on and talking about games? Expecting to get no's from a lot of people, and surprisingly, I've had very, very few no's.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things is that everyone's looking for ways to get out there, right? It's a very smart move to create a platform that other people can come to promote their stuff.
Yeah.
Everyone's looking for ways to do that. Where the collapse of starting with magazines and newspapers and the rise of ad blockers, it's getting harder and harder to find a way to let people who don't already know you and your stuff let them find out, to be discovered, as it were. by new people. So, I don't know anyone who doesn't look at if you've got a if you've been doing it long enough, or you've got a good enough audience, if you've had enough people on previously that that we know about, and you say, you want to come? You want to come on my show? We say, yes, yes. I want your audience. I want your audience to know about me. I want your audience to know that I do a live stream on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific. We call it 50 Years in the Dungeon, and they should tune in.
They should tune in. And I will make sure there's a link in the description when we wrap up so that people can click it and go right there. I should put the banner. Oh, I'm going to leave the banner down so it doesn't cut off the bottom of the picture, actually.
I want people to know that there's a free newsletter for the show, 50yearsinthedungeon.substack.com. And they should go there. They'll get in their inbox the new who's coming up next week, and they'll get to see the finished drawings and all the other fun stuff. I'm terrible at promoting myself.
I hate promoting myself. And I think, even with the 3D print stuff, I don't know why, but I am horrible about sharing it. And I did it today, and it felt really weird. And I'm like, but I've got to get over it.
We all do. All right, I'm going to switch over to coloring now. Turn that off.
Yeah, before we met up today, I watched For Love of the Game. I absolutely
I love that.
Being the emotional guy that I am, that movie gets me misty-eyed every time. Then I just watch something like Major League to take care of that. I think I drive my fiance crazy because I can quote that movie almost verbatim from watching it so many times.
You know what? I can't do Major League. I quote verbatim too much from many different sources. I certainly could do Bull Durham backwards and forwards.
That's one I haven't watched in a long time that I should watch.
You should. Talk about the trifecta of Kevin Costner baseball movies.
Yeah. Yep. Moonlight Graham. It was one of my favorite small parts in Field of Dreams.
Oh, I love
Guy's
that
getting
movie.
there.
It is such a good movie.
It is. And I can't think of the actor's name, but his brother-in-law, after the daughter chokes on the hot dog, like, when did these guys get here?
Timothy Busfeld.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And when he turns
when
around,
did all these baseball players get here?
Yeah. Do not
don't
sell this farm.
Ray. Don't sell the farm, Ray.
My cat is into something. I don't know what, but I hear her being mischievous in the other room. I'm waiting to hear the crash, and then I'll figure out later what she broke.
You tried to kidnap me with your finger, you big dummy.
Yeah.
I'm going to beat you until you go away. Oh my God, you're from the 60s.
Yeah.
That's people will come, Ray. People will most certainly come.
You'll charge them $20 and they'll pay it without even thinking.
Hand it over. For it's money they have and peace they lack. All right.
Oh boy, I just lost
What do
the
you
name
think?
of
Should
the
we have
movie.
what color you going with? Green on your goblin or
Yeah, I went with actual goblin green for a paint for his skin.
So who's having a good season for the Red Sox?
Oh boy. Geez, I just lost his name. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to look up his name. You put me on the spot, and it made me freeze.
Would it be Duran? Is Duran having a
Jaron
good
Duran, thank you.
season?
And then I saw today that one of their pitchers just donated $50 million to fix up their training facility.
Nice.
And like, I guess obviously ownership was like, what are you doing? He's like, I don't want to go anywhere. He's like, and even if I do, he goes, at least people will have like next generation of Sox players will have a killer training facility.
Yeah, well, that's a really
Jaron
good way to
Duran.
show up management, right? Look, I'll put my money in it, and now the fans for years will get to say, "You cheapskates!"
Yeah. Yeah, the Sox, for the most part, seem to have taken on the Billy Beane approach to baseball. Because when they let like Mookie Betts traded him to the White Sox and everything, you could hear the screams from New England out where you are, I'm sure.
The people out here are too busy screaming about the Mariners doing nothing. All off season, and then being surprised.
But they're not
You know
doing
what the
that.
thing is? The fans are surprised because the team turns out to be pretty dang good, and maybe they didn't need to do a lot. So management maybe can go, but that won't stop fans from complaining. That's what fans do. That's what we do. And
That's right.
Not just that's what we do. We complain about crap. Although I'll tell you, I find myself getting very annoyed with the fans who want to tear down and rebuild a team every time they have a bad month or even a bad year.
Yeah.
The Mets, it's working out pretty well since they're having such a good year, but they had a strong team. They just had a team that it was a bad year, and that happens in baseball. It's a game that very much loves averages, and people don't like to either they don't actually understand math or they don't like to think about the fact that in order for that to be average, they've got to be less than that half the time.
Yep. Like, yeah, it's funny that you say that because if you look at the best hitters in the game, they're getting hits roughly 38% of the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it cracks me up how people will be like, this guy sucks, but he's hitting 326.
Right.
But man, thinking of the Mariners, the teams that they had back in the 90s with Edgar and Griffey, Randy Johnson, Ichiro. Oh, it's a shame they didn't get a title back then because
it is. There's so much that goes into it beyond having that strong. It's so much. There's such a quotient of luck, or some people call them teams of destiny or fate. right? But they're getting the breaks. The breaks are going their way, and the same team, if the breaks only break even 50% for them, are just middle of the pack, trying to make the playoffs.
Oh, that looks great, my friend.
Thank you, thank you.
I'm wondering if I should paint that little centerpiece on the crown like a gemstone color. Looks like it should be a gemstone to me.
Could be.
So it's going to become one on mine at least, I think. There we go. It's taken shape. Actually worked out kind of well. I'll show you with me going over the gold with it.
Let's see. Oh yeah.
I wish I could get the. It actually kind of looks like a reflective gem the way it worked out with it being a contrast paint.
Excellent.
Now, have you been to Cooperstown?
You know what? I have been to Cooperstown, but only once. Which, given that I lived in downstate New York and went to school in upstate New York all those years, I feel like that's a missed opportunity to have not been there more often. Oh wait, no, I went. I lie. I went twice. But once was a very quick visit.
I've been once. It was back in the 90s, and I would love to go again to see.
Yeah, I'd love to see how the music. It's been that. It's been. I went in the '80s, so, and I'm once in the early '80s, and once in the late '80s. The early '80s was a very quick trip. I was part of a summer camp. They took us all there for a day trip. But because it was a camp group and we had to be back at camp by a certain time, it was a very, very short stay at the museum compared to what I would have liked.
I could probably spend the whole day there.
Oh yeah,
easily. When I went, we were following the band Fish, and they were playing in either Albany or Ithaca. I think they played both, but I don't remember which show it was for. And we had one of those campers that slides into the back of a pickup truck.
Oh, nice.
And 4 of us piled into it. 2 of us would stay in the camper. 2 of us would be in the cab of the truck. And oh boy, wasn't that an adventure.
That sounds like a good trip. That's the kind of trip you come home with stories from.
Oh yeah, we'll save them for when we're off air. Oh, we had a blast though. We should have gotten it. I'll just say I'm glad cell phones were not a thing back then.
Yeah. So, are you at all a fan of Bare Naked Ladies?
Somewhat. I know their music, and I enjoy it when I hear it.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't say a fan, but I do enjoy their music.
All right. You want some Bare Naked Ladies stories?
Sure. Well, you're going to make me share my fish stories then.
Well, I'm not going to make you do anything. But
Well,
since we're on musical stories, and this is also a TSR story.
oh, nice.
I am and was a fan of Bare Naked Ladies from their first album. Some friends of mine, when I was in Japan, they sent me a copy of the CD of Gordon, their first album.
Yep.
And I loved it. So I came back to the U.S. and worked at West End for about a year, wound up going over to TSR. And the thing was, when my friends sent me the CD, they hadn't sent me all of the CD. In order to make it cheaper to ship, they just took it out of this case and they sent me the CD booklet, but not the back of the CD case.
Yep.
And I was a kind of super obsessive kind of collectible person. It made me pissed every time I took it off my shelf that there was no back on it. And you say, what does this have to do with TSR? Well, I'll tell you. I'm at TSR, and Bare Naked Ladies is playing down in Chicago. TSR is in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, about an hour and a half north of Chicago. So I go down there. A friend of mine from college lives in Chicago, also likes the band. We go to the band. We go to the show. And while we're there, I bump into two of the guys from The Office. I bump into Sean Reynolds, Sean K. Reynolds, as folks might know him publishing-wise, and Dave Eckelberry at the show. And they're like, we didn't know you loved Bare Naked Ladies. I do. Oh, we like them too. Great. So we're the next week, I go into Sean's office. And one of the reasons is that at that point, TSR did not let most people have. We did not have outside lines, outside computer lines. So if you wanted to check your email during the day, there were only like two or three different offices that had that, and Sean was the online rep for the company. So we could go down to his office, and if he wasn't busy, he'd let us. I'd log on to my AOL account and check my email.
Yep.
So it wasn't strange for me to just kind of go down to Sean's office, but I went down probably just to check my email, and he was there, and we started talking. I saw you at the show, and I told him about my CD thing, and he was like, "Oh, well, as it turns out, he had a weird story where one of his friends stole the CD and left him with an extra case."
Oh wow!
So he gave me that, and this was so surreptitious. This so serendipitous. Great. And he said,
awesome.
Did you know they're coming back again?" I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, well, they played Chicago, and they're doing a bus tour, and they're going out into the Midwest, and when they come back, they're going to play Milwaukee at a much smaller venue. And you want to go? We're going to go." I said, "I totally want to go." He said, "I'll get tickets." I said, "Great." He said, and I he said a little sheepishly, he said, "And we might even be able to get backstage passes because I'm online through his work. I don't even remember which online service it was at the time, but he had made friends with Ed Robertson, the lead singer of the group, and they were basically email buddies, and he said that they might be able to get him backstage passes when they come to Milwaukee." And I said, "That would be awesome." I mean, he said, "No promises." I said, "No, it's okay. No worries." So turns out that they are going to be there, and and they contact him and say that they're going to set him up with backstage passes. And I said, awesome. And I said, Sean, does he know what you do? He says, he knows I'm the online rep for TSR. He says, but yeah, does he know you work at TSR? Did you tell him you work on D&D? Because he was doing some writing and stuff with the game then. He said, no. I said, Sean, you should totally tell him that. He said, well, I don't know. I want him to like me. I don't want him to think I'm a nerd, some kind of, I want these guys to like me. And so I grabbed the cover, the original album cover of Gordon, which is photos of them in their early 20s. And I said, look at these people, Sean. They've played D&D. You should tell them. And so he kind of mentions it, and they say, oh, that's cool. He said, I can maybe bring you some books. I said, awesome. Oh, yeah, we used to play. So we show up for the concert, and as we're getting there, a limo pulls up, and the band gets out. They've been out having dinner, and Sean calls out to them. They like, oh, get inside quick. But they look, it's no, it's Sean. So they come over to talk to us. And we say, we brought you some books, and pull out a monster manual. And Ed and Jim, the bassist, go, so cool, and start flipping through. Oh, we killed that. Remember, we fought that thing. And Stephen Page and Tyler, the drummer, look at the two of them and are like, who are you nerds? And so we have backstage pass. They said, we can't take this now. Bring this to us after the show. So we do, and we're hanging out, and they invite us to come back to the bus to hang out in the bus.
Nice.
And Jim and Ed are like, well, we're saying, oh, such a cool show, and the new album's awesome. We love it. And they're like, oh, let me tell you about my Paladin, and let me tell you about the time I killed orcas.
That's great.
So we hang out, and it's awesome.
That sounds awesome.
We move out here to Seattle, and that next summer, Bare Naked Ladies is doing a tour, and Sean's like, hey, Stan, you want to get tickets? The Bare Naked Ladies are playing here. In fact, at Disney, Ed said he can get us tickets for this show. So
oh boy.
I say, great. And so we go we get free tickets to the show, and hang out backstage again, and get to nerd out again. So we never assume that they're going to get, like, we buy our own tickets, but every time they come to town, Sean reaches out to them, and they offer us better tickets. And so, and backstage passes, after show passes. So I get to see them like 3 or 4 times. And each time we bring them tribute, we bring them books that we have published recently. They're not playing D&D. I think it was kind of cool the first time, and after I was like, oh, awesome, yeah. So I brought Ed, my first novel came out, the Craft Clan, which is a Legend of the Five Rings novel, and it says by Stan, just Stan, ! And they ask what's up with that, and so I explain my nickname story, which I guess now maybe I have to tell when I'm done with this story. And they say, oh, okay, cool. And it's at that point that it kind of strikes me that for us, this is like the coolest night of the year. One of, right? We get to go hang out with Bare Naked Ladies. But for them, this happens after every show in every city, wherever they go. There are people that every night there's someone they get to see. So not that it makes me feel less special, but it kind of puts me in a mind of, okay, they're not really remember us that much. Like Ed and Sean talk all the time, but I've shown up a couple of times. I get kind of like, haven't we met before? Yeah, it's good to see you again. The next time they show up, I'd given them the bestiary, which had Just Stan. Next time they show up, I've got my novel. Wizards wouldn't let me put Just Stan on the novel. It had to say Stan Brown on the cover for what I think are BS reasons, but whatever. That's the way publishing goes. So I bring them a copy of my novel, and Ed looks at the novel and says, "Hey, wait, I thought you were Just Stan." I'm like, he remembered. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
So I'm thinking, all right, well, this is cool. Like, now it's more. I'm more than just. It's more than just a see me once a year at the Milwaukee stop or whatever. I've clicked into memory somewhere.
That's great.
So I hear from Sean sometime in the next year. I mean, I still see him all the time, but Sean tells me that Ed's doing a fundraiser for his kids' school. His kids go to a private school or a school that requires some kind of funding, and he helps to get interesting things for them to auction off. And wants to know if we can send him some signed books or something if we have them. I think Sean was putting it together, and was I willing to sign some books? And I said, great. Now you know what? I'll do a drawing. So I did a little original drawing and sent it to them. I bet it didn't auction for much because who the hell knew what I was? But and sent that around. And then I didn't see them for quite a long while between Sean and then me getting laid off from Wizards and me moving down to San Diego. Various different things happen. And years pass. And I'm at San Diego Comic-Con. This would have been about 2009. And I'd heard on the radio that Bare Naked Ladies had been in LA the night before. And I know what huge nerds they are. And they had done the theme song for the then super new and popular Big Bang Theory.
Yep.
So I know I should keep an eye out. They might be somewhere at this show. And so I'm hanging out at a friend of mine had a booth. I'm hanging out at his booth, and all of a sudden, around the corner, through the crowd, comes Ed Robertson, just kind of going from here to there. And I see him, and I jump up and I say, "Hey, Ed," and I figuring, all right, he's only ever seen me like at this point 4 times in his life. 5 times maybe, and it's out of nowhere, and we're in the middle of San Diego Comic-Con with 500,000 people. He's not going to know who I am. I'm hoping when I remind him, he'll remember why he might know me. So I say, "Hey Ed, I know you don't remember. I'm Sean Reynolds." And he turns around, he looks at me, he goes, Stan, is this your booth? What do you got here? What are you selling?
That is so cool.
It was super cool. And my friend turns out also to be a big Bare Naked Ladies fan, and his jaw drops because there's Ed Robertson, and he's acting like I'm his best buddy. And he comes over, "No, what do you got? Show me. I've got to run off to this thing in a bit, but Sue, I was hoping I might see you here somewhere." And so he said, "We're playing at this very small venue that I said, "No, I didn't know. I knew you were in LA, but I didn't know, or I would have gotten tickets." He says, "What do you want? 2 tickets, 3 tickets? What can I get you?" And so,
oh, wow.
So I looked at my friend and said, "You want to go?" He's like, I say, if you have 2 tickets, that'd be awesome. I don't really want to bug you, Ed. He said, "Oh no, it's no problem. I'll just leave him at the will call." So we go to the will call. We have like eighth row center.
Wow.
and after show passes. So
That is so cool.
that was pretty awesome. The fact that uh, um, out of nowhere in the middle of San Diego Comic Con, I can turn around and say, "Hey Ed," and he goes, "Stan." I'm like, "All right, I guess I count. I am an acquaintance of Ed Robertson's."
That is super
That's
cool.
kind of official.
That is so rad. Yeah, I don't have a story that cool yet. I'm working on one because one thing I want to do is I have this here. I brought along to show you. I'll zip over for a minute to the other screen. What the pride and joy of my baseball
Oh,
card
nice.
collection is a Gem Mint 10 Wade Boggs rookie card, because Wade Boggs always has been and always will be my favorite player in Red Sox history. Just because, dude, that guy was so dialed in all the
Yeah.
time. Got run out because he was in the twilight of his career after he had his first like sub 300 season, and
Right.
then goes over to the Yankees and just starts knocking the cover off the ball again. And both him and Clemens were supposedly in the twilight of their careers, and they had very long twilights. And yeah, I just love everything that guy did, and I actually have thought of writing him a letter just to tell him how much I adored him and still do.
Yeah.
And because I've got his address, I just don't want to be a weirdo. That's the only thing.
Well, so how did you get the address?
Through an autograph, like a group that I'm in with autograph people, I was showing about, I've got a bunch of like almost a full binder of Wade Boggs cards. And this guy's like, oh, I've sent him a few cards to get autographed, and just send him like, I can't remember how much he said it was for the autographs. And he's like, I just sent it to him. You want the address? And I'm like, yeah. And I've just never done anything with it because I don't want to seem like some stalker fan, like in that Robert De Niro movie, The Fan, or anything, and have him.
My advice to you is, it sounds, I mean, it's a perfectly reasonable thing, right? Just like your friend said, if that's the address that he's taking things to, it's, first of all, probably not his home address. It's probably his
Right,
business
right.
address. So send them the letter.
Yeah, never know.
I can tell you, as someone who does not, even as someone, I don't put myself anywhere near that category, but as someone who occasionally gets fan mail, it is never not an awesome thing to hear from someone that they like what you did, they remember what you did, and that it had some impact on them.
Yeah, I kind of credit that guy with my work ethic because of just how much time I always heard he put in, like for batting in the batting cages and eating buckets of fried chicken and stuff like all the little stories about him. And like there's one that I can't fully recall at the moment about how much he drank going from Portland to, or from Boston to then Los Angeles, when the Angels, before they became the Anaheim Angels. And the guy's just a legend to me.
Well, I'd stay away from the drinking stories and stick with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. But, the guy's work ethic is basically what gave me my don't quit attitude.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think you should totally write to him.
Well, maybe I will. Ugh, I'm running out of paper towels. Yeah, I'm going to have to touch up his little, Hmm. I see what I did wrong here. Now I've got to fix it.
Yeah, I hate when that happens. I just had a few of those. I didn't say them out loud.
I am notorious for throwing myself under the bus. There we go. I'm kind of doing what you did with. I'm realizing now he actually doesn't have the furs covering his whole body. Because I can barely see him with as low as I have to keep the lights at risk of looking like I'm albino from turning the lights up to be able to see fully.
Well, I mean, so one of the things that I think is great about minis is that there's so much room for you to interpret what's there.
Right.
Maybe he's wearing a shirt, maybe he's not. I mean, one of the reasons I don't like it is because I like to change things. I like to interpret so much, and then if I'm drawing it, whatever I see goes there, and I just don't. I find it too frustrating to try and paint a mini because I want it to be different.
I can see that. I do need a different brown for his furs, so I'm going to have to finish that after we're. And that is coming along splendidly.
I think yours is looking good too.
Yeah, it's looking all right. Better than I was anticipating. Just because I haven't painted in a century. There? Oh, there are. I can spruce this up a little bit here. So, who are your all-time favorite baseball players?
Well, I was certainly a Tom Seaver fan. I got to watch him during his heyday. I was there at a game versus the Pirates where he set the record for, I don't know whether it was most strikeouts in a season or most strikeouts by a certain point in his career or something like that. That was pretty awesome.
Oh no. That is pretty cool. I just accidentally dipped my paint in the silver, or my brush in the silver instead of the gold.
Ooh.
And started painting over gold. Now it looks really weird. I'm going to fix it though.
Let's see. Put that there.
I love that this guy's sitting on a pile of gold with another chest under his foot. It's like, you thieving little goblin.
If you got it, flaunt it, he says.
That's right. So, what are some of your favorite monsters out of role-playing games?
I really like Umber Hulks for some strange reason that I've never been able to figure out.
They are pretty cool.
Elithids are cool.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of the standard. What's cool? I like cool monsters. They're the ones I like, the cool ones. All right, how am I going to do this?
Displacer beasts were always one of mine.
Displacer beasts are, yeah. Of course, Cthulhu. like
Yep.
big Cthulhu and mind flayers.
Yeah, this guy's coming along all right.
What else? I love the first edition Player's Handbook cartoon of the of Otto's irresistible dance with the Umber Hulk dancing.
There we go. The more I paint him, the more I'm seeing places I've missed.
That sounds familiar. That sounds too familiar. All right. I'm trying to decide whether I should. It's about 2:30. Somewhere, I got 3 or 3:30. I'm gonna have to
Okay.
wrap my part of this up. I'm trying to decide whether I should. So I've done flat colors here. So the way that I do coloring is flat colors and then shadows and highlights and stuff like that. So I'm trying to decide whether I should go in and do highlights on him or flats on the chair and the other stuff around him.
That is a tough one.
I mean, in the end, I'll do both. When all is said and done, it'll get done. But what I want to do while we're chatting here, I think maybe I'll work on him. Trying to think about what's most exciting for the audience. I feel like a jerk when I think like that, but
Yeah, but that's really what it's all about with this kind of stuff,
What does my audience want? Shut up. That's what they want. They want you to shut up.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Lately, I've been getting more views after the live shows. And I think some of it's because I go kind of late at night sometimes, and my interviews can be very long form with some people. I think I told you when we had talked previously, I had Brian Shutter on that created Neon Lords of the Toxic Wasteland.
Right.
And we talked for almost 7 hours. I think it was like 6 hours and 45 minutes that we were on talking. And it got to the point where it was after 1 in the morning, and we're like, geez, we should probably go. But I could see us doing something very similar where we sat here and painted and different questions pop into my mind.
Yeah.
I've tried to get much more freeform with my quote unquote interviews because I feel like I come off way too rigid if I prep a lot of questions ahead of time. Now I just kind of make a list of talking points and hope I don't run out of stuff to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I do too. I'll tell you, I think that's a great way to do it. It makes it's first of all, it makes the conversations more interesting to listen to. It's much less chance that the person you're interviewing is going to give you the standard answer if it feels like a light conversation and you're just kind of shifting the subject a little. And it also is it's more. I just think it's more interesting to listen to.
Yeah, I agree. Kind of happy with how this guy's looking. I think I'm going to have to do the rest of his fur post our chat, but and then I'll have to show him off when you share the drawing. But I
Yeah,
definitely like it.
when I finish, I'll send you a copy of it.
Cool. I definitely like how I made the thing a gemstone on his crown. That came out far better than I was expecting. I was just expecting it to look red, but with the gold underneath it, it really pops.
Excellent.
I can't wait to see it under full light. That's going to be really fun. Or horrifying, one or the other.
Maybe a little of both.
Yeah. Like, oh gosh, what did I do? But considering this is the first mini I've painted in over, let's see, my last paint and talk was a terrain piece. I had Stefan Picorni on from Dwarven Forge.
Oh, that would have been fun. What do you guys talk about?
A little bit of everything. And yeah, oh boy. We talked about Dwarven Forge. We got into politics, food, really a little bit of everything, and like what we played. For characters, we talked about the world that he has built for his players. And I've got to get him back on because we've got to finish our pieces if he has the time.
I remember when he was just getting started with Dwarven Forge, Ed Stark, who was in here a little while ago and has played in a number of my other stories, he was organizing the first year that we did a thing called the Dungeon Delve at Gen Con, which was so at Gen Con. What we did at that point usually was we'd have little demos we'd run at the booth, and we were trying to find something interesting to do, and the team had come up with the idea of doing this thing called the Dungeon Delve, which would be an ongoing event at the booth, and you'd sign up for an hour at a time. You could sign up with a group or as an individual. You get put with other people.
Yep.
And and there was a single gigantic dungeon that everyone started at the same point, and you went up until a certain point, and once someone cleared a room, that room was cleared. And the idea was, over the course of the convention, for everyone who played to help clear this whole thing with a big monster fight at the end. And they had maps and such. And Dwarven Forge came out, and Ed went over to their booth and talked to Stefan and told him what he was doing, and said he would love it if Stefan could donate some Dwarven Forge. He'd put it there, and we could make a little sign telling people what booth they could go get it to. And the story, I was not there for this. The story, as it's been told to me, is that Stefan was a little unsure about this. He'd only brought so much, and just kind of asking for free stuff. But it was TSR, and Ed was a known quantity, so he said okay. And people would go running from the Dungeon Delve over to there to buy the stuff. Now, his stuff sold on its own. I'm not saying the Dungeon Delve sold Dwarven Forge because their stuff is so freaking awesome.
Yeah.
But people who might not have wandered by his booth did go to the TSR castle and saw this thing and said, "Where did you get that?" And there was a little sign. And so they ran off, and he sold out of everything he brought to that Gen Con.
That's so awesome.
The next year, I think he just shipped out like an entire pallet full of stuff. Saying, "Hey, you guys want to use this again? It's okay with me."
He's such a good guy.
Yes, he is. He really is. And after the Wizards buyout, it must have been then, we all got big raises. They paid us much better in Seattle than they did in Wisconsin. A whole bunch of people. I think Monty Cook was the one that organized it. It might have been Ed, might have been Monty. But we put together one gigantic order from Dwarven Forge for people for their home use. Everyone who wanted it wrote down what they wanted and paid the money, and so it was a single order, and they shipped it to Wizards. And that was at least a pallet, maybe 2 pallets full of stuff that came in.
That's crazy. That's a lot of Dwarven Forge.
It was, and I think that I may be making this part up. Maybe this was just you know how it'll go. We think he probably said this. I think there might have been a Dwarven Forge shortage for the rest of the country because Wizards had put their order in.
That is funny. Yeah, he definitely makes an amazing product. That there is no doubt there.
Yeah. And as you say, super nice guy.
Yeah. Really nice guy. Oh, he's so nice. Like, kind of like with you, it's like, I feel like, we're 2 buddies catching up. And that's the way I felt with him too. It's like, we had known each other and we were just like, hey buddy, hey, how's it going? And we just jived. Yeah, that looks so good.
Thank you.
I'm having more fun watching you draw than I am painting. It's the problem.
I'm sorry. I can be more boring if you want.
Oh, no. I don't think you could be boring.
I assure you I can.
This guy's looking all right for me. Here, I'll show you real quick.
Let's see.
Actually, I wonder if I can pop. Let me pop this screen over. There we go.
Look at that.
He's coming along awesome. Nice. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, apparently I need to paint more so I can just continue to get better at it because he really doesn't look that horrible like I thought he was going to.
Turns out that's the secret.
Practice makes perfect, they say, even though perfection's unattainable, but can still try for it.
It's hard to get worse at something you do all the time.
Yes. Then there are some things, like when I used to play disc golf, that I just never got better at, no matter how much I played it.
Yeah, well, there are some things. I certainly have a few of those in my life, too. Shoot pool, never could shoot pool, no matter how often I tried.
You and me both. I was great at driving the cue into the...
Yeah, me too. I'm good at braking.
Nope, I would definitely not be one of the guys that Jim Croce would sing about saying in Leroy Brown. That's
right,
for sure.
Yeah. Ooh, what is that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. We've been talking for over 2.5 hours.
I know. It's why I'm saying I got around 3 o'clock. I've got things I need to accomplish this weekend that are not just drawing. Much fun as this drawing is,
and it's a great one. Yeah, I can't wait to tell my daughter you worked on Demon Slayer. She is gonna freak out.
I was a guest at a convention last year. and for for my work as a game designer and cartoonist too. But, someone on the event staff came to the guy running it, because it's also has a strong manga track, anime and manga track. Someone
Yep.
came to the guy running it and said, "Well, why don't you have Stan doing any seminars about the manga?" And the guy looked at him and said, "What manga?" He didn't know I did that.
That's too funny.
And he said, "Yo, he does that kind. He does that. He works for Viz. You probably have a bunch of stuff that that he worked on." And it turns out that he had been reading an issue or a volume of Demon Slayer that I had worked on. He had it in his hand. He flipped it over, went to the back, and there was my name. He's, "No, how could I not do that?"
Now, do you go by Stan Brown with that, or they don't allow you to do just Stan?
Just Stan, whenever they'll let me.
Well, at least
Although
they'll
sometimes, so because, yeah. So I guess we're at the stage where Stan tells his Stan story. So the not at all secret bit of information here is that none of my names are Stan.
That I actually learned today, and
Yeah.
I was like, huh. So,
and my my first publications were all under my given name, Stephen Brown. So the question I often get is why? What Stan? So in college, back in college, I was dating a very lovely young lady. My first really serious relationship, as it were. And not even as it were, my first serious relationship. And it was getting to be close to Valentine's Day. And I was walking through the University Union one day, and there was a sign up. There's a table in the Union. One of the frats had a table, and they said, "We will deliver flowers anywhere on campus on Valentine's Day, super cheap price." And so I went over and I said, "I want to send a half dozen roses to my girlfriend Judy at this dorm address." And they said, "Great. Here's a pink piece of note paper. Write a message. We'll deliver it with the flowers." So I took the piece of pink paper and I wrote, "Dear Judy, happy Valentine's Day. I love you very much." And I signed it. So now Valentine's Day is coming up, and I grew up watching far too much sitcoms from the 60s. Far too many sitcoms from the 60s.
yeah.
And I thought, what would be a good thing to do on Valentine's Day? And I thought, you know what I should do? They're going to deliver these. I should pretend that I forgot it's Valentine's Day. And then, and I had a present and I had a card, and the flowers were going to get delivered, and I'll pretend I forgot it's Valentine's Day. And then when the flowers get delivered, I'll also have these, and it'll be a surprise. It'll be great. You can already see where this is going to go wrong.
Yes.
So Valentine's Day comes, and we get together for lunch, as we often do. And she doesn't say anything about getting flowers. And so I figured, well, we live in the nerdiest residential college on the school. on the campus. And clearly, the frats will think the cool girls get flowers before the nerdy girls. So I just need to pretend through lunch. And then she'll probably get the flowers delivered in the afternoon, and it'll be all right. So we have lunch, and she and her roommate are kind of dropping hints about it being Valentine's Day because I say nothing about it. And I play dumb, and the roommate looks very disappointed in me. And we make our farewells. We're going to get together for dinner that evening. So dinner comes along, and it's because of the holiday. It's a special dinner. The dining hall is made of whatever they do. It might have been real steak as opposed to what they normally serve us, or it might have been chicken cordon bleu ish or something. But it was very nice compared to what we usually eat. And she didn't say anything about getting any flowers, so I realized, all right, well, we're supposed to get together this evening anyway. I'm supposed to just meet up I'm going to go to their room to study. So I just have to pretend through dinner. Because they promised they were going to deliver on Valentine's Day everywhere on campus. It was going to happen. So I go through dinner, and not only is the food nice, they've decked out the dining hall. There's like red crepe paper hanging from the lights and hearts on the windows. And I figured if they directly point those out, the jig is up. But if they don't, I'm not going to say anything. And they drop little hints, but they don't directly. They don't point to anything. And they'd say, wow, dinner's really nice tonight. And I'm like, it is. Boy, I wish they could do this every night. Let it sit there. And so the roommate is really, really sure that she's going to have to talk Judy out of dating me because I'm just a big loser. And Judy is certainly disappointed. You can tell. But we part ways, and it's going to be at her place I'm going to be there at 8, and we're going to do some studying, and that'll be good. And I figure this will be great, right? Because between now and when I show up, the flowers will get delivered, and I'll show up with a gift and a card, and it'll be, and I can say, surprise, I knew all along. And it'll be like everything will be fine. Everything will be fine. So I show up at about 8, and I knock on the door, and I hear, just a minute. And I think, okay, this is good. She can open the door, a big kiss, everything's going to be good. And she opens the door, and she and her roommate are both in bathrobes with their jammies on and towels wrapped around their heads. Yeah, we had lab this afternoon. We needed a shower. Sorry, but we just need to make sure we were decent before we let you in. And I come in and I look around and there's no flowers.
Oh, no.
And I think, well, what the hell? No, they said they were going to deliver. And they're going to deliver it. So I don't say anything. And we sit down and I said, and I think, oh, no, it's going to work out. Because now I'll be sitting here and the flowers will get delivered and it'll be even better. So we sit down and we start studying. And 8:30 comes and no flowers are there. 9 o'clock comes, there's no flowers there. 9:30 comes, still no flowers. Ugh. And around 10 o'clock, they lock the dorm doors, for security's sake. Yeah. So no deliveries are happening after that. And so about 10:15, there have been no flowers. And I just kind of put down what I'm working on. I say, hey, Judy, today's Valentine's Day. And she says, yeah, I thought you didn't know that. I said, oh, no, I know. And I reach into my bag and I pull out a card and a gift, and I say, I got you these, but I wanted to surprise you, and I had some flowers sent to you, and I was waiting. I wanted it to all be a big surprise, but so the whole day's gone. But I'm sorry, but happy Valentine's Day. And she says, "Oh, that is so sweet. I thought you forgot. Oh, I did that. But wait a second. You're Stan?" And I said, "What?" And she opens her closet door, and there, thrown on the floor in the closet, are half a dozen roses and a heart-shaped blue note with calligraphy on it. What they didn't tell me when they handed me the pink note, I thought they're going to deliver this note. No, they took the note and gave it to someone to write calligraphy. And so it very clearly says, "Happy Valentine's Day, Judy. I love you very much." But I had signed it, not with a clear writing my name. I signed it with my signature, which is a big S and a T and a and an N. Anyone who knows me knows that's Stephen. But they looked at it and said, "Must be Stan." So it very clearly says, in clearly printed out calligraphy, "I love you very much, Stan." And turns out it had been delivered about 7:45. And when I came to knock on the door, they were standing there, and she's staring at these flowers, and her roommate is going, "Who sent you those? Who's Stan?" And she's like, "I don't know. Why is he sending you flowers and telling you he loves you?" Like, "I don't know. Steven's going to be here any minute." "I know." So when I knocked on the door, they threw it in the closet and closed the door and hoped there would be no reason that they needed to get in that closet while I was there.
Oh, wow.
So I tell my friends this story, and everyone thinks it's hilarious. And I'm also doing some cartooning at the time. And every time people start talking about the cartoon, they start saying to me, they say, "Hey, that cartoon, that Stan guy that does that cartoon is pretty good, don't you think, Steve?" Which is really funny because for the cartoons, I sign my name very clearly. It's not my regular signature.
Right.
And so they thought that was super funny. And then they started at the comic book store I went at. They started saying, there's this Stan guy that does great cartoons, and here he is. This is the Stan guy that does cartoons, because they thought it was funny. And so it was at that comic book store that I first met Ed Stark, who is back in the chat now.
Yeah, he is back. Yep.
He says he's married for 30 years and never pretended to miss a holiday. Yeah, well, I was a dummy, and like I say, I watched too many 60s sitcoms. So Ed got to know me as Stan. And when I got hired by West End, they hired Steve Brown to be an editor. But the days before I was coming, Ed and another friend of mine who was working there were going around going, "Stan's going to be here tomorrow. Stan's going to be here tomorrow." And I show up, and people said, "Steve, Stan, what's the story?" So I told this story. There's about 12 people that work at the company, so I can gather them all into one room and tell the story once, and now everyone knows.
That's great, though.
Ed's the first person to go to TSR, and then, as I was saying earlier, a bunch of other West End people. Eventually, TSR hires Steve Brown to be an editor. And the day before I'm coming, they're all saying, "Stan's going to be here tomorrow. Stan's going to be here tomorrow." So I show up, and people are like, "Steve, Stan, what's the story?" But there are 150 people that work there. So I wind up having to tell this story more than once and still never got to tell everyone. But wow. I made sure like the receptionist knew it in case someone called looking for me. Like my parents called looking for me because everyone called me Stan. And then I'd been there a while and people started asking me, "Hey, Stan, when's when's your first product going to come out? And I'm like, what do you mean my third product came out last week? And it says Steve Brown on it. I'm like, oh yeah, Steve, I forgot. Yeah. And I start thinking, this is a little, I might have to do something about this. And then I wind up, I'm waiting on a freelance check, and it hasn't shown up. And I go to the guy that deals with that, and I say, hey, I'm waiting on this freelance check. He said, it just came in. I mailed it to you. I remember it came in. I mailed it out to you. And I said, well, I never got it. He said, well, is this your address? And it was an address in Georgia. And I said, no, I live here in town. What do you mean? Well, who is this? It's an address to some guy named Steve Brown. And it turns out there's another freelancer named Steve Brown. It's a different middle name, but they, in point of fact, the guy who did it thought that it was not for me because I'm Stan, and so he sent the check to Steve Brown. The only Steve Brown he knew was this guy that worked in Georgia, so he had to get my check sent back. And I realized I need to change things. I either need to make people stop calling me Stan, or I need to use Stan as my pen name. But I didn't want to be Stan Brown. And it was never Stan Brown. It was just a joke about my signature. But if you just write Stan on its own, it looks like a mistake. It's too short. Doesn't feel like a complete thing. So I needed something to say, this is it. We're done. And an exclamation point. So Stan, exclamation point. We are done.
Oh man, that is.
And so I became Stan.
That's crazy. Ed wants to see the updated version of the miniature.
Yes, show the progress on the miniature.
So he's looking all right, I think.
It is.
I'm a little too close to the camera. But yeah, that's the mini. And the picture is looking absolutely amazing.
The picture's doing all right. The picture's doing okay.
Don't forget to keep an eye on time. I don't want to.
I am. No, it's
have you. I don't want to have you run over your.
I don't have a hard out, but yeah, sometime in the next 15, 20 minutes, I'm going to tag out. I think.
Okay.
I'm looking at it like, okay, I'll do the hair, and we'll look at the time after the hair.
All right. Boy, both you and Owen are just chock full of great stories.
Well, I tell you, I haven't even touched my Japan stories.
Well, see, that's more reason to have you come back. I'll have to send you another mini, and we can do this again.
That sounds like fun. It sounds like a good time.
Because I have had an absolute blast.
Yeah. For a long time, I didn't tell that Stan. I told it in person. Like I would tell it at a con, or anytime I was in person. But I never wrote it down, and I didn't tell it anywhere that it could be recorded. And in part, that was just kind of an affectation. But the excuse I made was that Judy never gave her okay for me to tell stories about her in public. Eventually, I was talking to her and telling her that. She says, you can tell that story anywhere you want. But don't. So, as time has rolled along, I've relinquished, and now I still haven't written it. I probably should write it down sometime. But I've told it on a number of different podcasts and such.
It's a good story. Because that is totally. I am pretty sure I've actually done something similar. I know when I proposed to my fiance, I acted like something was wrong, and she came into the room, and I got down on one knee, and she knew right then. that she was in trouble, and she was crazy enough to say yes. I don't know where she went. She popped in for a few seconds when she got home from work, but the
Well,
poor
good
woman
for
didn't know
her.
what she was getting into.
I did not learn my lesson there, and I did other things like that. I have since learned my lesson and never do anything like that again. It's just it wasn't ever really funny on TV either.
Ed says to ask you about Korea.
Well, that's a Japan story that we'll tell another time.
All right.
that's
Ed says he has
that's
most of
his
your
favorite
stories
story.
indexed. Yeah, he's got it in there a couple times. It says Korea story, a good time in Korea. I have most of Stan's stories indexed and ask him about Korea. Our next episode will have to be the Japan Chronicles.
There are some really good Japan stories. I have very nearly done like a live one-man show of just Japan stories on a couple of occasions, and it just didn't work out. I hope one day that it will work out, that I'll get to do that, because there's some really funny stories.
Ed says beans.
Says, oh, the bean. Oh yeah, the bean story.
You can tell you've known each other for a while when he must have your stories pretty well memorized. He's like, oh, this one, and this one.
One of the reasons I'm confident in the stories is people who know them ask me to tell them again.
You've got good ones. I can see why.
That's a good sign.
Most of my stories are like, Dave, you can't tell that one here.
Yeah.
Ed says, did you tell him about the event we have planned for upcoming cons?
I did not. So Ed is working very closely with Page, the Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo.
Yep.
He's coordinating the guests for that, and for Page, and also for Gamehole Con this coming year. Ed and I are going to do a game together, an event together, where he's going to run the game, and I'm going to do characters drawings of the characters in the game, and then be a bunch of pre-gens. And then while the game's going, I'm going to sit at the table and do drawings of the things that happen during the game.
Oh, that's so cool.
They will be the more scribbly drawings as opposed to this fully fleshed out and rendered one, but they will be fun. I do that for games I'm in anyway. I'm almost always drawing cartoons of what happens during the game. So this will be a game where if you're playing, first of all, you'll get to keep your character sheet, and then when we're done, I will send you a PDF with the collected drawings of the of your adventures. And of course, it'll be based on quotes and things that people say at the table. Should be good fun.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Now I definitely need to make it to Page. I had been hoping to go to this year's, and then unfortunately with my dad passing away, it just didn't happen. So I wasn't in much of a mood for gaming conventions,
right.
But I know you've got my buddy Brian Shutter as a special guest for Page 2026. I was going to almost say 2025. Yeah. So I will definitely have to try to make that.
Well, you got the better part of a year warning.
Yep. So, and I've been applying for jobs left and right. So hopefully I'll have a job that pays well enough and it allows me to take the time off and I can go, because that sounds like a very fun game to play in.
Well, Ed is a great game master, so I hope I I feel backed up by that, no matter what. Hopefully, I'll give a little extra for his gaming, and his game mastering will give a little extra for my cartooning, and people
Ed
will be
says he
entertained.
Ed said he has to go again. Good seeing you. It was great having you in the chat, Ed. Thanks for joining
Thanks for
us.
stopping by twice, Ed. Good to see you, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, I could sit and watch you color this all day.
You got painting to do. Don't you give up.
I'm letting him dry a little bit before I put any more on him. I gotta figure out where. Oh, that's one spot that I missed. I've got to touch up.
This makes absolutely no sense. What I've just drawn. I've got a skull. If those eyes are open, they should go into the center of the skull, in the center of the cup. Why are they black?
Yeah. Because that's how
And if
you're
they're
used to
open,
seeing
who's going to
skulls.
drink from that skull?
Yeah. This goblin.
I'll tell you what I need to do. I'll tell you exactly what I need to do. This will be. I'll do this, and that'll. Because the rest of him is looking pretty done.
Yeah, he's looking great.
So I'm going to erase out what I have here on both layers. I've got a layer. I did the flat layer and the highlight layer. So erase that on that layer. Erase that on that layer. It doesn't make a lick of sense. And then I'm going to come back to the sketch layer. And I'm going to clean out the eyes first. And then even though it's not on this on the mini, which looks like just eyes, what? Water's going to pour out of that skull. Are you kidding me? I'm going to add some jewels in the eye.
Nice. It's funny, I had to look and I actually did the eyes black as well, and now I'm like, dang it.
Well, but that's what they are. It's not it's not you do it. I just looked at this. That's what the mini sculpt is.
Yeah.
For sure.
But I'm going to do what you did. I'm going to go in and just see if I can get this.
All right, and maybe we'll make this a ruby. Red's a nice color. I don't have any real red on this yet.
And what program is this that you're doing this in?
I am using the app Procreate on an iPad Pro.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that looks great.
Whoop, come on back. I didn't finish erasing that, did I?
Yeah, when you send me the finished version, I'm going to have to print him off and tack him up on my wall here.
There we go. Jewels in the eyes. 'Cause, 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 'cause
That is one fine-looking goblet that he's got there.
No wonder he's so happy.
And it is what he's holding up, so maybe he's just really proud of it and happy to show it off.
Look at what I got.
I'll have to touch up the skull now because I just got a bunch of gold paint on his face, on the skull. So I'm going to try to get that off of there.
I like your idea about making his eyes red, too.
It looks so good.
Thank you. Where did you get the file for this mini?
I got this mini from a company called Crippled God Foundry. I actually have a license with them to print and sell their miniatures, so I figured to use that, and I just thought this one was really neat looking.
Yeah.
And it comes from a set called, oh boy, I gotta look real quick now. Where is it? Here we go. Move that over here. Come on, where is it hiding? There we go. I have got so many files, it's ridiculous.
I hear that.
No. Oh, where are they? Aha, here we go. Goblin King's Guard. It is from a set called The Troll with Goblin Blood.
Okay. Come back here. Tell you what, let's.
Zunabar the Goblin King is this fellow's name.
Let's come down here. I usually wait until I finish the whole thing, but since I'm going to wrap up here for the day, I'm going to put. I'm going to put a stand at the bottom here.
Nice.
And I'll finish. I don't know. I'm torn between. I do a different kind of coloring on the Thursday show. What I do here, let's pop over here and show you. I do. They're all super quick drawings. So about half an hour, I roll it up. I give myself about 25 minutes to draw it, and then I do 3 drawings a show. So let's look at this week. The encounter tables look like this.
Nice.
Roll a dice twice. The first one that came up was a Kenku washing the dishes. So I do first I do a quick sketch like that, and then I draw lines over it, and then I do a kind of coloring that's meant more to look like you're using markers or crayons, the kind of quick coloring you might do for at home. So
I love that though.
Do that.
Because I'm playing a Kenku in my friend's 5e campaign. And I made up 5 D100 charts of phrases that he knows.
Oh dear.
So, yeah, and he's been picking up phrases from the party. We recently went into a town and we heard someone scream, and my Kenku now has been mimicking the scream at random moments. But which will just it startles everybody in the group when it happens, because I'm just like, much louder than that. I don't want to do it because my fiance will come running in thinking something's wrong.
Yeah, so that's so I say I'll do 3 in an evening, and the second one there was a mommy brushing her teeth.
That's great.
And the third one was adventurers jogging.
I like the armor. It looks like he's got. Yeah, he does have armor on while he's running.
Yeah,
That'll wear you out real quick.
You work out in your pads, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's too funny.
Yeah, so about 25 minutes, 30 minutes. But I see the coloring is that you see it's a brush on here called gloaming, and I do that quick coloring with a very little bit of highlighting.
Yep.
But for our drawing, I did my more complete drawing on the goblin. I think maybe I'll do a quick coloring on the backgroundy stuff. I don't know. I'll figure something out.
Well, I can't wait to see the finished product. And I know you do have to get going, so.
Yeah. As before I go, I will give one more shout out for 50 Years in the Dungeon.
Be sure to check it out, and I will get the link to your Substack and everything in the description so that folks can find you and subscribe. And Stan, my friend, thank you so much for spending so much of your day with me.
It's been great. I've had a very good time. Thank you for having me, Dave. I hope.
And I would love to get another mini printed here and send it your way and do this again. I'll probably make it something that's a little easier for my old eyes to see in the semi-darkness. Because if I turn all these lights on way up around me, it like completely washes. Like I look like I stepped out of that movie Powder from the 90s.
I know that feeling. I've got because I do this, I got a couple of little ring lights, and I turn it to as warm a light as I can.
Yes.
Because I'm also pretty pale.
Yep. Well, all right, my friend. Thank you so much. And Ed, if you watch this later, thanks for tuning in and being a part of this. And anyone that watches in the future, thanks for watching. If you enjoy it, give it a thumbs up. Head over and subscribe to 50 Years in the Dungeon. Subscribe to gameswithdave.com. Other than that, you folks have a great day.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.